Welcome to Connections with BCD Travel, an ongoing conversation about the modern-day travel program, the impact of technology, and how travel buyers can take control and drive change. What are we waiting for? Let's start connecting.
Welcome back to Connections with BCD Travel, everyone. I'm Miriam Moscovici, and I lead the Partnerships and Intelligence team here at BCD.
Hello, Connections fans. I'm Sydney Kessler, and I work on BCD's communications team. If you're a Connections loyalist, you'll notice that, no, I'm not your normal co-host, Chad, but don't worry, he'll be back soon. But for now, I'm excited to join the pod today and co-host with you, Miriam.
It's great having you on this episode, Sydney. We celebrated International Women's Day on March 8th this year, but it's always the right time to celebrate women. So on this episode, we're veering off our normal framework of business travel technology and celebrating some of our outstanding colleagues.
And more than just celebrating their journey to success, I know we'll be asking them to share their views on changing landscapes, advice for colleagues and leaders, and what empowerment truly means for them.
Absolutely. So let's introduce today's guest, Sydney. Up first, we've got Leslie West, Global Senior Vice President here at BCD. Based in the U.S., Leslie has been in this industry for a long time and has seen many cultural changes over the years.
We also welcome Silvia Negri to Connections, based in South America. Silvia is a Senior Director with our LATAM Program Management team.
And we welcome back Shelley Fletcher-Bryant to Connections. Shelley was on a Connections episode last year and is a European-based VP with BCD's consulting arm, Advito.
Okay, Miriam, I'm ready to jump into my very first episode with you. Let's do it.
Okay, everyone, before we get into today's topic, I want our listeners to get to know you a bit. Can you each give us your origin story? How did you get to where you are today? Leslie, let's start with you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you guys today. 40 years in the industry for me, 33 of those here at BCD Travel. And funny enough, my journey in the travel industry started on a whim going to travel school. And I just saw a newspaper ad and decided that was something I wanted to do one day. And funny enough that, who would have known that it would have led me to where I am today. But from there, I went on to be a travel agent at Murray Travel in Dallas, Texas, which was a early acquisition by the legacy BCD organization. And then from there on to back office and then agent technology and back to operations, and then chosen to head up what we know today as our client shared services organization. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to share this podcast with you.
What about you, Sylvia?
Well, I started at an airline call center long ago, then moved to business travel as an agent, then team lead, supervisor, operations lead, managed projects and implementations. I did get a degree in tourism at a local university here in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where I live. And well, as I was fluent in English and we became a global TMC, the agency where I worked at that time, one person did it all. So as I spoke English, I had to manage all global TMC relationships covering client RFPs, brand and standard compliance, client implementations, customer relationship with key companies in Latin America, everything. But it was funny that actually did encourage me to continue to dig into the corporate business travel. Well, finally, many years ago, I moved to BCD in the commercial area and so much enjoy managing people, clients, and all types of projects in many countries in my region, Latin America.
And Shelley, what about you?
So I think I'm a typical squiggly career person. I left school at 16 and got straight into work. So didn't go to college, didn't go to university. I wanted to get straight into the world of work. And I started in destination travel marketing, so very much leisure focused. I did a ton of different things, worked in PR, different marketing jobs, ran my own PR and marketing agency at one point, did a ton of studies outside of work in my own time. Oh, that's when I wasn't doing an evening job working as a waitress at the same time. And then kind of fell into the world of corporate travel. So I'd been doing destination travel, leisure travel, even retail marketing. And about 8 years ago, I moved to the Netherlands with my husband and started my career journey with Advito. I started as a consultant and then moved into sales, and I've been doing this for the last 5 years.
Now, everybody here has such unique backgrounds and shows such a different climb to the top. Now, Leslie, the theme of this year's International Women's Day is actually accelerate action. As someone who has been in this industry for decades, what does accelerate action mean to you?
Well, the United Nations first recognized International Women's Day officially in the 70s, but really it dates back to 1911. If you Google it and do some history on it, like I did, because I didn't know. But anyway, the views around women in business have changed significantly, from decade to decade. For me, the theme really drives home a new sense of urgency for breaking down barriers for women worldwide. It's time to speed up the change to ensure that progress isn't just a goal, but it's actually a reality.
Shelley, while we were inspired by International Women's Day for this episode, I know you've got really strong feelings about drawing attention to this topic more than just one day out of the year. And I know you agree that this is more than just women supporting women, right?
So much so. I genuinely wouldn't be where I am in my career were it not for some amazing men elevating me in the early stages of my career. So I mentioned I left school at 16. I got straight into a job in, tourism admin. My first boss at that time, a wonderful man called Mike Foxley, who sadly is no longer with us, really backed me when maybe others would question my ability, being young and a woman. And Mike did everything to really help drive and push me forward. So what I think is really important about International Women's Day is, yes, celebrating women. And I want to celebrate all the great women who have played a part in my life, personal and professional. But I also want to recognize and celebrate the men who celebrate women and who help us be better and who stand up for us and fight our corner and enable us to be stronger, better, and bolder.
Now, okay, before we dig any deeper, I want to add some context to this conversation, which means we're going to have to talk about some potentially uncomfortable topics. Silvia, as we were planning this episode, you shared some thoughts about unconscious behavior, communication styles, and experiences that you've personally been through. Can you share with us some of those stories and maybe any advice on how we can all be better?
So, if any of these cases that I will come up with shortly sound not too bad, or you're exaggerating, or what's the issue? I don't get it. Then please let me invite you to think of the same situation I will describe happening to a man. A, what would the reaction be? B, how often does this happen? One big discussion table, all men, one woman. The woman gets asked for a cup of coffee. Hearing comments about how sexy some colleague or candidate looked at an interview or call, or how sloppy a woman looked when they didn't wear makeup in whatever expected way or had some white hair. By the way, speaking of interviews, being asked if you want to be a mother at a job interview, really? Condescending comments leaving you out, assuming you cannot attend an event after the office because you have kids, or being told to deal with the minor or household things at a meeting instead of your man colleagues. Can you ask food and beverage staff to please heat the coffee? And of course, the very usual, at least for me, your husband does help you a lot at home, and having to go through the full exercise of how he's not helping me. So you asked how we can get better too, right? Just think it's just a matter of being more aware of the issue, not forgetting about being aware. Does that even make sense in English? So I would ask to watch out for what we say. Ideally, watch out for how we think, but at least start with what you say. Would you say it to a man in the same or similar situation? Do you really think it's appropriate? Also, and hardly ever found, of course, ask for feedback proactively. I know I'm getting really up there right now, but have you ever asked your female colleagues for any examples they go through in the workplace? Have you asked, have I ever offended you? How? If you're a leader, have you transparently shown you want to know if someone needs to improve? Have you done something about it?
I'm going to ask a question here about stereotypes because oftentimes in those situations, I find myself personally thinking, am I being too sensitive? Am I overreacting simply because I'm a woman when in reality, I need to not overthink calling out that unacceptable behavior? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, stereotypes. Personally, I think stereotypes play into a lot of what we do and say, all of us, all the time. And the trick is for us too, right? For everyone to get over it, not go by them any longer. I think we're making progress there, especially when you see young people. I can clearly tell a difference in how they have moved or are moving more away from stereotypes. As for my generation, at least, not quite there. Still, the point here is that you need to feel confident enough to have the uncomfortable conversation.
The word confidence really strikes me, Silvia. And, I think that I often source my confidence when I'm feeling unsure and have to have these uncomfortable conversations, from talking to peers, talking to colleagues of mine, talking to more senior women than I am, to get advice on how to handle some of these things. Because I've had uncomfortable conversations myself. And I know that the confidence isn't always sourced from inside, but can sometimes come from your friends and colleagues that you lean on. One of those people happens to be you, Leslie. We've worked alongside each other for a really long time. We were just counting. I think it's almost 25 years now. You've seen me since I was just coming into the industry, right? You've always struck me as somebody who's really confident. So I'm interested to hear your own reflection. How does confidence play into this whole view of women and success in business?
Well, even highly successful women have periods of self-doubt. I'm not always 100% confident, but having trust in myself and being confident, I think, is the catalyst for most success. And confidence is perceived as competence, and that builds credibility in the workplace. You know, as female leaders, I think we have to ensure that all boats rise with the tide. We can do that through guiding and mentoring. Many of the folks listening to this podcast will know I am not shy to pick up the phone and talk to an employee, regardless of whether they report to me or not in the business, and just tell them how they either came across or showed up on a call, or how they may could have even handled that a little differently, and all in the spirit of good coaching. Right? It doesn't have to be adversarial. It's just like, hey, this is what I heard, and I think this is how you could have change the conversation around that particular call. So, I think we owe it to each other, particularly to some of the young female leaders that are up and coming in our business, right, to make sure that they have that kind of guidance and mentorship.
So where do you find the inspiration, though? We can all share stories about call out all the things that need to change, but how do we inspire and empower each other to actually make these changes?
Well, my inspiration comes from my network of folks, whether they're my mentors, family, coworkers, and my team. So I would suggest, find your crew. That's my comment, because if you don't have the right people around you, get a new crew. Just get a new one. I try to lead by example. And one of the things that I harp at my team leaders about all the time is, look, you need to show up and take up space, right? You need to be visible. Don't be afraid to make decisions. As a matter of fact, one of my unspoken rules for my leaders at any event, whether it's our Global Leadership Summit or whatever, be in the front row at the center table, because you're going to make eye contact with all the senior leaders of the organization. They're going to know you by name. And anybody who's ever attended one of those will ask me, why do your people always sit in the front row? And that's why.
Yeah. By the way, take up space. I think that's the bumper sticker.
Yeah, I love that. And I think just piggybacking there on what Leslie said, that, sit in the front row, be in the center table. Absolutely. People that always gravitate towards the back of the room. Why would you do that? You want to be in the mix. You want to be in front of people. You want to be grabbing attention. I think we have to do so much more to recognize what we're good at and have more confidence. And it's very easy to say, be confident, but there are many ways to help get you there. Just take small steps, learn what you're good at, do more of what you're good at, get with your crew, like Leslie said, just get people around you that really help you grow individually, and ask people to be your mentor. Like, it doesn't matter what stage you're at in your career, you can still learn stuff. I reached out to a really inspirational woman who I heard speak 2 years ago at an event, and I reached out to her. I told her how much of her inspiration she was to me and asked her if she would be so kind as to spare me a bit of time once a quarter to just connect so I could ask her about her career journey and what she's learned and maybe what knowledge she could impart to me. And it's so valuable. So don't be afraid to ask people to be your mentor, man or woman. But be really clear, I would say, if you're going down that path, be really clear what you want to get out of that relationship, because people are busy, people are very happy to help. But if you're going into a situation where you want to learn and grow, be really transparent about that and explain what you hope to get from that relationship. And generally, people will be really open to it and they will be supportive. And particularly successful women, from my experience, really want to help see other women grow and succeed.
And Silvia, what type of woman inspires you? We've talked about leadership and confidence and mentorship, but what resonates with you?
Well, that too. Overall, someone that is knowledgeable, that speaks about what they know with total confidence. Again, confidence is a huge piece. An attitude of, here I am, here's what this is like, while at the same time they are open to discussions, regardless of company titles, hierarchies, of course, gender. That's something I admire. That type of woman, like Leslie, actually, inspires us because they are, for example, right, high up there in leadership positions, and we all know it's not easy to get there. Also, any woman that speaks up is clearly an inspiration to me. Speaking about making decisions, this is making a decision. Speaking up is making a decision. So again, from my point of view, and I know I already said it, but I do want to bring it up again. Speaking up is not yelling or complaining all the time or even being an activist. It's not about that. I admire women that don't get intimidated, women that face what's wrong, and women that do something about it.
Now, Shelley, I'm curious to hear your take on what still needs to change. Now, of course, we've made big strides, but what work still needs to be done?
Yeah, we have made big strides, but there is always more that can be done. And I think I touched on it earlier, just backing yourself and women backing women is so important, and recognizing that we've all got the power to support others and to help them achieve their potential. One thing that really frustrates me, I'm currently recruiting for a position at the moment, and this happens all the time when you post a job, particularly at a senior level. You get tons of applications, but you get many more applications from men who have fewer qualifications. And this is not to talk down men at all. Just hear me out. What this is about is it is statistically proven that women will not apply for a job if they don't think that they meet 90 to 100% of the criteria in the job description. Whereas a man will apply for the job if he maybe meets 40 to 50% of the criteria, because he's confident in his ability, that he can sell himself, and that he can convince the hiring manager that he can learn the next steps, or, in some cases, he'll blag his way into the job. But that's not the point here. The point is, I really want to see women applying for jobs that they're not necessarily the perfect fit for, but to have the confidence that they could get there, that they have confidence in their own ability. And while they might not tick every box from an experience perspective, if they've got the passion and the drive and they think they can do the job, then apply for the job. And this comes to any kind of social interaction, post that blog post, put that comment on LinkedIn, have your voice heard, and stand up for yourself and back yourself, because you start doing that, other people will recognize your power and they'll start backing you more as well.
I love that. It's once again that word of the day, confidence, making its way around.
Leslie, what's your call to action here? As a senior leader, what advice do you have for our listeners?
Well, I'll tag on to what Shelley just said there. First of all, you're going to miss every shot you don't take.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So get out there and, own your own journey. That's the first thing. But I do think that, regardless of gender, we can all be part of the change that still needs to happen. And, keeping in the theme for this year, let's trim in the sails and move faster, because we really need to make some meaningful change around this.
Now, I know the podcast usually ends each episode the same way, but Miriam, if it's okay with you, and I know it's only my very first episode, but can I add a twist to your typical final question?
Of course.
So I want to ask each of you, if you could go back, what advice would you give yourself as you were starting your professional career? Silvia, let's start with you.
Be confident, speak up, and trust your instinct about what's wrong. And again, what's worked great with me, invite people to discuss, engage in discussions about it, be open from the get-go by sharing your thoughts, how you might have felt about something, and talk with people about it. And one more thing, if you're there already, help other women, help them notice, help them speak up too.
I love that. Support your fellow woman there. Now, Shelley, what do you think?
Well, for me, it's very much don't beat yourself up over what you don't have and focus on what you do have. So for me, not going to college, not having a degree, that was a huge thing that hung over me for a really long time. I'm over it now, but don't beat yourself up over what you don't have. And it is your life, only you can live it. So take control of it. And my final piece is find your inner superhero, whether that's Wonder Woman or She-Ra or a personal favorite of mine, Cheetara out of Thundercats. But find that inner superhero and let that drive you.
Find your inner superhero. What a great way to close it out. Now, Leslie, how about you?
Well, what I would tell my younger self is really just trust your own compass. You're going to hit storms and tides and headwinds, but those just are going to make you stronger as a leader and as an employee. As I said earlier, find a good crew. If your crew's not good, if you don't have the right network, you need to get the right people around you and surround yourself with the right people. I would tell myself to just never stop learning. And lastly, don't be afraid to take the helm and don't be afraid to course correct. My career at BCD Travel was anything but linear.
Mm-hmm.
I was at VP and back to director and senior director and back to VP and back to director and then up to SVP. I mean, it was an up and down journey for me. But this journey is yours, and you need to grab it and make it your own. Nobody's going to hand this to you on a silver platter, but we're all going to be here to help you along the way.
Well, Sydney, I think you did a great job co-hosting your First Connections podcast, but we can't let you go without asking you a question. So what are your thoughts as we reflect on International Women's Day this year?
Thanks for asking, Miriam, and thanks for having me on. It's been a while since I was behind the news anchor desk, so I had to dust off those vocal cords. But I am proud of how far we've come. But the thing is, I know there's still a long way to go. I'm ready for a world where women aren't the first or the only or one of the few in any industry. Equality shouldn't be something that we're striving for. It should just simply be the standard. So it's exciting to see companies like BCD contributing to that change. But in short, I'm looking forward to where we go from here.
Well said. And that's all for this episode, everyone. Thanks for joining us and helping us celebrate women in business travel regardless of the day.
Thanks for connecting with us. BCD Travel helps companies travel smart and achieve more. We drive program adoption, cost savings, and talent retention through digital experiences that simplify business travel. Learn more about the topics you heard on this episode by visiting bcdtravel.com/podcast.